So, hello once again, everyone. Steve Taylor here, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Do It For Yourself podcast. I really appreciate it if you've listened in before or this is your first time. That's great. What we really try to do in this podcast is invite on guests that are out there in various businesses and that are kind of doing it for themselves, right? In one form or another, have their own business. Maybe they're changing their business. Maybe they're thinking about doing their own business. We really interview them and have an open conversation, trying to glean nuggets from them about their journey, and hopefully some of those nuggets can pass on to everyone else, so that we learn them from listening to others rather than having to go through themselves ourselves. Unfortunately, that's how most of mine are learned. So, without further ado, let me introduce my guest, and it's a topic that's really interesting to me. Rob, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Steve, thanks for having me. And I love the idea behind your podcast of doing it yourself because that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do. But as you know, Steve, I am now a coach, an advisor to financial advisors. So even though I grew up in the business as a financial advisor, actually helped run a firm and said grace over several hundred financial advisors. Now I spend my time advising advisors, coaching them, helping them make the businesses that they're building stronger and stronger.
Interesting. All right. So, Rob, that's really interesting. Let's dive into this, because I'll tell you, it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. I find myself as a coach naturally. I love coaching my kids or other people when they come forward. So let's start out. Talk to me a little bit about that transition, right? When you're the advisor and you went over to be, the coach, whether that was thoughtful and purposeful in the sense that, hey, I know this is what I'm going to be doing after I leave my advisory practice, or did it just kind of happen? What's your journey there to get to where you are now?
Right. Well, I started out as an advisor, and I had a lot of success in my career early on. So I was very grateful for that. And I was just one of those guys that the other guys, mostly guys, there weren't a lot of women in the business at the time, came to and asked for advice. So I ended up mentoring other advisors from a very early stage in my career. And that gave me an itch to get into management. So I became a local manager for the firm that I was a part of, so I could say grace over, manage, lead a couple of handfuls of advisors. And then that led to the opportunity to actually be the chief operating officer of the private client group of that firm, where I had those 250 to 300 advisors that I was saying grace over. And the thing that I enjoyed doing most in those management roles was really building on that mentoring. Even though I was continuing to run my practice as an advisor, I also took on the coaching responsibilities for that firm. And as time went along, I realized that I was really enjoying the coaching part of my management role more than anything else I was doing, being part of a big organization, and more than I was enjoying working with my individual clients. So at that point, I purposely said, I really need to focus on what I enjoy doing most, what I'm really good at. And that's how I started my consultancy. And I didn't step out on my own right away. I kind of had one foot in my old world, running my advisory practice for several more years, and the other foot in a new business, the coaching and consulting business. But then eventually it just became what I do now through Truist Fan Coaching.
Understood. So let me ask you, Rob. Let me go back to where you were before, and you said you were put into this role, overseeing all these private advisors. So that's where that's what's interesting to me, right? When you have to run your own practice, and also you are put in this mentorship coaching role. Maybe that was more structured initially in that scenario that you're at. But I see people in our industry, or when people, that are attorneys, when they go out there, they have a small practice, a small advisory, and they also do this coaching role. That initial foray into this, when you were given all those advisors in the private client group, was mentoring and coaching Was that just an additional responsibility you were given? Were you compensated some for how that well? How did that look initially when you were put to oversee all these people?
Well, initially, it was just a little bit of an add-on to the compensation that I was making as an advisor. It was just part of honestly, a transition package to a new firm that wanted my help because they knew that I was really good on the coaching and mentoring side. But then after and this might sound like I'm bragging, but I had major impact on the firm in the first year. They actually named they created this was a firm that loved giving awards, and at the annual meeting they created an award called the Impact Award, and I was the first recipient of that because they saw the benefit of the work that I was doing, and then that gradually led me into or them wanting me to do even more than just the coaching and mentoring that I was doing. So that's how the role grew. But coaching and mentoring was always a part of it. But I also had a great team. I had Nudia and Janice were their names or are their names. So they're my partners in my private client business. So they took on more responsibilities helping my private clients while I was off doing the management and the coaching thing.
Interesting. Okay, so that they brought in, they saw that value, and you even did better than they thought you would. That's really interesting to me. So you're in this practice. You know, it seems like a larger organization. You have your advisory business, but this coaching and this advising is taking off, and you're really enjoying it. And you know the gap from where you are today, it's your own independent business. But at that point, I guess there were a few steps to get there. How did that look when you were going and you were realizing, okay, the full time advisory may not work for me. I'm going more into this, and I'm doing this kind of on my own, right? I'm a consultant where I have to go out there and find these advisors who want this coaching rather than being given a stable of 250 horses, really, right? These are, energetic, motivated advisors. How did that look when you had to leave that area and go out there on the coaching side and find these people on your own? How was that transition?
So it was actually a relatively smooth transition, and for a couple of reasons. One, when I started my business as an advisor, I had a telephone and a telephone book, so I had nothing. So I knew what it was like to start a business from scratch, and I knew how to succeed at doing that. But also on top of that, I learned to be a fairly good networker through the work I'd done through the years as an advisor. So I had built some natural networks that I could reach out to and say, "Hey, I'm doing this on my own." You knew that I was doing this um, at my previous firm. Now I'm doing it on my own, so I can help advisors at other firms. I just made sure I got the word out there and stay consistent at it. But that was also part of the reason I kept one foot in the door, working with my private clients. That was my backstop because I knew I could do that, make a good living. So if for some reason my coaching business failed, then I had something else that I could go back to. So I kind of two-stepped it in a way to just be very conscious. I had triplet daughters at the time,
Mm-hmm.
so I had a family to take care of. So I did it very very cautiously, but I also gave up a big salary being part of the management team of the other firm. So there's some trade-offs. So I'm not sure it's the perfect entrepreneurial story, in that I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur because as an advisor, I worked inside of a firm that paid the light bills. I was a captive advisor, was not an independent advisor. But then when I stepped into the coaching, I went completely independent. I had nothing to support me other than myself.
Interesting, interesting. So so you were that's I like that what you're saying, and most people I've had lots of guests here, and people talk about when you want to go entrepreneurial or on your own, there's this concept that you should just jump into it, right? Go 100% or really commit to it, or else it's not going to be successful. But all the numbers, all the research shows exactly the opposite, right? The most successful entrepreneurs are really very risk averse. So they go slowly into it. They touch the water, they test right before they get there, and they go in there 100%. So, that's a great story and a great lesson for anyone wanting to go out there and doing it on their own. So for you, you still had your toe with those financial advisory clients, but then eventually you decided, okay, I'm going to go full bore. I'm going to get rid of those. So talk a little bit about, I'm interested about that particular, decision, because now at that point, unto that point, you've always been a coach with clients, and now you're going to be a coach without clients, and what your thought process was on that, and if it had any ramifications to your coaching clients that you had at that point.
Um, so the first thing I really want to make clear is the main reason that I switched my private client business off and turned my full-time attention to coaching was that I really felt like I wasn't giving my private clients the attention they deserved. I really felt like I had lost interest in them, was losing touch with them, even though I had a great team. And I owed it to them to make sure that they had the best situation that they possibly could. So in the end, that was probably the straw that broke the camel's back. It was realizing that I had to commit to one thing because I wasn't focusing where I could with those other clients. And I'm still friends with some of those clients to this day. So those people were very, very important to me. But having made that decision, one of the things I had always said in talking to coaching clients about one of the advantages of working with me is that I was, at the time, there are more of us out there now, but a rare coach in terms of having sat in the same seat as the advisors and leaders that I was coaching. I could say, I've been through what you've been through, or I'm going through what you're going through. And as I left that role, that became past tense. And so I couldn't say it exactly the same way. But I think because I still continue to focus my practice solely on working with entrepreneurs in the financial advising space, financial advisors and planners and RIAs, I never lost touch of the industry. And it's really interesting that you asked this question, because I was talking with a client of mine several days ago, and we got into a discussion about why I am so important to him and to his team, because we've been working together for 5+ years. Mm-hmm. And he says, Rob, I have some other people who do some other coaching and consulting for me, and they play different roles, but you are the one who knows the business the best. And so you are my advisor or my coach because you come at coaching from having been an advisor. So that history of having been an advisor has stayed with me even more maybe than I thought it did. Just, when you first asked the question, I was like, that's interesting to think about that, because it was a difference.
Yeah, I love your answer there, Rob, because that's something I think about a lot, right? And when I see these coaches out there, and that's trajectory that they've gone, some have done it before, others haven't done it. They try to promote that aspect to it. At a certain point in time, there becomes, time expands, right? That from the time you were an advisor, that becomes further and further in your rear view mirror. But your answer is really interesting. I hadn't thought about it. That it seems like, even though, because you had that experience, the time is expanding, it's still just as valuable, and that you are still staying informed and on top of the business through your work with your clients. So it seems like, I had thought, I wondered, would people, the further you get away from it, but I guess your experience is, even though that time has grown, that you've not experienced that in working with your clients, or those experiences are still as valuable today as they were X number of years ago when you were actually doing them.
Yeah, this is a really interesting line of questioning. I haven't thought about this before, and maybe just a little bit when I mentioned that conversation last week. But I think the other part of it is I'm very fortunate. I have several relationships that are a decade or more long as a coach. So I am looking over the shoulder of the leaders of those businesses week to week. I know their businesses as well as they do. So that has allowed me to stay engaged in the business. So even though maybe I was kind of shortchanging myself for not being in the business as an advisor right now, the fact that I have been so into the businesses of my clients who are in the business, it's forced me to keep up with trends in you know whether in all the trends, whether it's on the investment side, or the compliance side, or just the marketing side, the different things that I can help clients as I work with them. So I just I'm maybe one layer removed, but I'm still in the business, even though I don't have my own practice.
Yeah, no, and you and I have known each other. I've been on your podcast. We've talked about it, and we talk. You get talked about communication strategies and items like that, like being able to effectively communicate what you do to the end client. It's a timeless skill, right? Back in the 50s and 60s, people needed to do it. In the early 2000s, people needed to do it, and going forward, people need to do that. So that skill set, primarily what you're coaching and getting your communication, that doesn't change.
No, it doesn't change. It really doesn't change because to be a good communicator, you also have to be a good listener, and so you have to understand what your clients are going through, what the challenges are that they're facing, what the goals they're trying to focus on. And I think if you're doing a lot of listening, communication becomes easier because you can give them answers that address what's most important to them.
Interesting. So let me ask this also, Rob, because once again, this really, as I said, this really interests me. So how you did it before, you were with a larger organization, it was kind of an add-on. It was really a mentor role. I think when you're in the same organization together and they're maybe more senior, I think the proper term would be mentor, right? Even though it looks the same, but now it's full-blown coach, right? It's consulting and everything there. So as you go through, and as you've mentored, now you coach and you work with these people and you see their wins, right? Because whether you're a mentor, whether you're a coach, it's all about the other person, right? It's not about you, right? You
Oh
love
yeah.
and you thrive and you grow from the successes they have. Do their wins, these end people's these end individuals wins, did it change any when you were no longer in the same organization and it worked to this role that you have now? I'm just wondering, maybe it didn't, but I'm just did it maybe improve? Was it different? I mean, how does that compare to how it was before to how it was now?
Yeah. Another great question. Very, very insightful. You're giving me a good therapy session here, Steve. But you nail it though. My success today is my client success, and I would absolutely say that when I was growing my own practice, because inside of most um, uh, advisory organizations, there are competitions for like who's doing the most business. I love being ranked near the top of my firm. And I especially love being ranked near the top of the firm while I was also leading the firm or helping lead the firm, because everybody knew that I was doing two jobs and doing them both very well. So there was a lot of ego in that. But I think maybe as the years have gone along, some of my ego for how I measure my own success has gone away because I really can celebrate the success of the clients that I'm working with. I'm working with a client right now who is um, working on an exit plan. And I know that the value of his business and the time that we worked together has gone from roughly $1 million to almost $20 million today.
Wow.
That's a huge win for me because I know that that business wouldn't be where it is today if I hadn't been a part of that business. And if we invited my clients on who are part of that business and you ask them, well, was Rob part of that? Could you have done it without him? They would say no. So that's enough for me as a coach. And I even think of some of my, I'm a huge Cleveland baseball fan, and Terry Francona was the manager of the Indians and then the Guardians for years. And I picture myself sometimes in the dugout, the way he just sits in the dugout very quietly and stoically, um, um, all throughout the game, doesn't take the highs and the lows of the players. But at the end of the game, he's the first one on the field with the high fives ready to go. And I like that imagery. And I think of myself in that same position with my clients.
That's such a good answer, Rob. It's funny to make a sports analogy. I'm a big sports nut, just like you. It's not really happening anymore. Remember back in the day, Dunleavy, jumps to mind for the Milwaukee Bucks. That he was a player coach, right? He had to coach and also be the player, right? And it feels like how your analogy was when you were at the larger firm. You were a player and a coach, right? And that player side is always probably always takes a little bit of precedence, but like kind of bringing all your different answers together, I really like, and I see this path. It seems like what you're saying is that, yeah, my individual success, and in our business we call it production, my individual success, that was a big part of who I was and what I did. But now for me to want to focus on the success of others, I need to sacrifice my own individual success, or put that behind, because that's not as important to me as anymore. And then I love your answer. You're saying it wasn't fair anymore, to your clients, to because you weren't giving this all your attention. So here's the big therapy question, right? That we'll kind of conclude with, because I love this is why I like doing this, because your answers are informing me, educating me as much as anything. The overall fulfillment, right? We're older, we've all aged. We have these different paths. How would you compare to the fulfillment as a producer, let's call it, right? The advisor, versus the fulfillment as a coach? I'm sure they're very different. Answer it however you'd like to say, kind of what is it, how does it, now I will ask you to say, how does it feel? How do you feel about it, right? We're talking about, I understand coaching for the other people, but your personal side to it, right? Like, so anybody considering to go down a path like you're going, how is your personal fulfillment change, improve, stay the same since you made this shift?
I think it's just what I have been able to do is continuously fulfill the purpose I feel that I have for the work that I do. I had a much different purpose, when I was in my 30s with three little triplet daughters in diapers, and than I do today, with those daughters grown, now a couple of grandsons too. But so my purpose was different. And so I think my purpose was more short-term focused, being the advisor, being the producer, being able to generate results quarter after quarter, growing my income, being able to send my kids to private school, send them off to private colleges. I had a purpose, but it was making sure that I could provide my family the best that I possibly could, and that was, I think, in a way, that's a given for us as dads. But now I think now as a coach, my purpose is broader. I love seeing the success that others have, because their success means they're having success with their clients, and their clients' success spreads to their family. So it just has a way of multiplying. So I just feel like I've tried to consider, and as you know, the title of our podcast is the purpose focused advisor. And that's something that's really important to me with working with my clients is not just helping them grow their business, but growing them with purpose. Why are you doing this? Why is this really important to you? Because at some point, as an entrepreneur, as an advisor, as a coach, it's not just about the opportunity to make money. It's the opportunity to do the other things sometimes that money allows you to do, but sometimes it's the time freedom that you get to be able to spend with your family or with the causes that you care about. So I hope that answered your question, but I think purpose is the big thing that's changed.
I love the consistency. I love you put it back to purpose, and it's such a great, great word, and I like how you use it. And no, man, these are great answers, right? And so I think what it finally would go to is a lot of people, and you probably get this when you're doing your coaching, right? Someone's gone about. They've had a lot of success in this business. They're making the financial reward, but like most people, if I'm not going to say most people, but many people, it's like you get to a certain point, you're like, okay, I have all the material stuff. Like, what else is there? Well, what's next? What else is out there? And I love for anybody who might be at any stage in their career or whatever job they're doing to say, yeah, you can do your job real good. In our example, we were both financial advisors, right? And that kind of skill. But then what's next? And a lot of the purpose and fulfillment comes from mentoring and coaches others and feeling your personal satisfaction through the success of others. I mean, it becomes very clear, right? And so for those, once again, this is something I consider, right? And this has been really, really helpful and beneficial to that thought process. Like I think about, okay, if you're going to become an expert, you're going to talk to other people about it. All right, this is not going to necessarily drive more dollars to my bottom line, but there's something in me wanting this, right? And wanting to do this. And this helps clarify that and the purpose of my direction. Rob, listen, this has been amazing, man. We've had this conversation. Is, anything here that we've talked about, maybe I haven't asked you that you'd like to address to kind of, just talk to anybody listening there, more nuggets of wisdom?
Yeah. So I would say one thing, something that hasn't come up, and that maybe some of your listeners might wonder when they see my background and the name of my company, which is Truist Fan Coaching. And they say, well, where does Truist Fan come from? And I'm not bringing this up as a plug, but that concept of being a Truist fan is really important to me. And it's behind that purpose, or it's part of that purpose, because I believe that we're all called, I don't care what our role is in this world, to be truest fans of ourselves, because to be able to do things for other people as advisors or as coaches, we need to believe in ourselves. And then if we're going to be coaches or advisors, we need to be truest fans of our clients. We really need to have their best interest at heart. And then to be able to seek that out for yourself from others, because when you are a truest fan to others, people become truest fans of you. So it's that idea of just treating others the way you want to be treated and having confidence in yourself. So I think that's really important as you're growing your business as a financial advisor, as an entrepreneur, as a coach. And I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that, because I think that's really at the heart of my purpose right now.
Yeah, well put, well put. I totally get it. I totally understand. Well, listen, Rob, we will get all the information in the show notes. Everybody will be able to connect with you and learn more about you. But I really, really appreciate it, our conversation. I've learned a lot. So thanks a lot for joining me.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Great questions. This was a very fun conversation.
Great, great.